And welcome back to the drawing board. Once again, my name is Mark Saxton, and it is another Friday night. Thank you for joining me yet again this week. Cheers to the Friday beers, or in my case, a mixed drink. Delightful. Now, jump right into it, dude. Postseason coming up this week. I can't wait. The Padres clinched earlier this week against the Brew Crew, which was pretty huge. A decent team going into the postseason to beat. Dropped the division. They weren't able to keep it alive with a win over the Brewers on the third day, and then the Dodgers beating the Diamondbacks. I believe that was on that Thursday as well, and Wednesday or Thursday. Either way, Dodgers won the division, which it is what it is. They got the tiebreaker. Um, so you know what I mean. It is what it is. At least we made the playoffs. We clinched. So that's awesome. As of right now, it is 7-4 Padres over the Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks still fighting to get into the postseason. I believe they're a game and a half out. Reds won tonight, and the Mets lost. So they, I believe, will stay alive no matter what happens here for that postseason, for that wild card slot. And in the NL, it is shaping up to be probably so. It'll be the Cubs and the Padres. They're obviously going to be playing each other, but the Mets, they're playing like they don't want it. The Diamondbacks have come a long way after being pretty much sellers at that halfway mark, and then the Reds. So I personally think the Reds are going to end up with it because the Mets can't figure it out. Um, Tonight, Boston clinching, getting that second slot, and now it's up to that AL Central. It doesn't make sense to me. What a fall from grace. I believe at one time the Tigers were up over 12 games, and now they find themselves tied with the Guardians. And I believe both teams tonight lost. As yes, the Rangers beat the Guardians, and the Tigers lost to the Red Sox, obviously, leading to the Red Sox clinching. So it's going to be interesting what happens and what takes place from here. But you know the Yankees, and the Blue Jays both clinching their spot, fighting for that division in that American League East, which is really interesting because as of tonight, as of this weekend for the last series, the Yankees play the Orioles and the Blue Jays play the Rays. So they're both playing a division, not rival, but um, they're both in their division, which obviously divisional games are always played tougher. Plus, I don't think the Orioles or the Rays want to be that team to just let them in and give them a trip to that divisional winner slot. So that's going to shape up to be real interesting this weekend. But other than that, Dodgers take the NL West. I called for the Padres. Brew Crew takes the Central. I called for them. Phillies take the East. I called for them. Seattle takes the West. And I almost did, man. I almost called for them to take the West, but I said that they would probably end up in a close second, and they ended up clinching that division. And then I called for the Twins to be a dark horse in the Central, and I hate myself for that. As once again, Cleveland and Detroit still battling it out. And I called for the Yankees to win that division, but I also said watch out for Toronto and Boston. So they're right there. They're tied right there in the American League East. So that's going to be fun to watch. Like I said, both playing divisional games, and this weekend's going to be fun about it. So moving along to the NCAA, where my LSU Tigers are playing Ole Miss Saturday afternoon. That'll be fun. I think that's going to be a showdown. Another game I think that's going to be worth looking into is Texas A&M and Auburn. Last year, Auburn winning in overtime against Texas A&M, subsequently putting Texas A&M in between a rock and a hard place to try and win that SEC championship due to uh, conference losses, and they didn't pan out. So then you got Oregon and Penn State. That's a tough one, man. I mean, Oregon's been looking good. They really haven't had a test until this point. Penn State, I believe, is been on the same path. I don't really. They played Villanova, FIU, and Nevada. So I mean, nobody really. So this is going to be a good test for both, I believe. Um, I think I think that Oregon's going to be a tough opponent just because whatever Moore is doing is working. Like I said, hasn't really played anybody real, but Penn State's always been tough, and that defense always been tough. So we'll see. I hate to put a prediction on that game. That one's going to be tough. Like I said, I don't know. I want to put it into the hands of Penn State because of that defense. So that's my prediction there. I think Texas A&M is going to win against Auburn this year and kind of get their revenge. And same with LSU over Ole Miss. I think it's LSU's year on that, and then I think it's going to be fun to watch just because Bama and Georgia are going to be your afternoon games, your late afternoon games. I expect Georgia to beat the brakes off of Bama. I don't think Bama is about any of that life this year, and I think Georgia's got that game in hand. So let's move it to the NFL. Last week, tough. Last week, real tough. Packers fan and losing to the Browns. Now, here's the thing: the Browns' defense is about that life. They're the real deal. Obviously, not making excuses, but obviously having two offensive linemen go down on the Packers side is always going to hurt. But um, they weren't able to contain them when they were in the game. So, I mean, you got to tip your cap with give respect where respect's due. So that defense is what won Cleveland the game. Not trying to shit on Flacco or anybody else, but I just think that's what it was. And then obviously the special teams coming up huge with a late fourth quarter field goal block, setting them up for victory. So it is what it is. I think every team has a stinker. I don't think this defines the Packers. I don't think this changes anything about the Packers. I think it opened up a lot of eyes, which I've been saying, having trouble moving the ball when needed, scoring in the red zone. Those are all big things. So I hope that opens some eyes and we can learn from that moving forward. But yeah, that's something that's gonna bite them in the ass if they don't fix that. That's gonna bite them in the ass late on the season or in the postseason or both. They gotta be able to score when they're in the red zone. They gotta be able to move the ball, open up new ways. I mean, if they're attacking your front line like that, your front offensive line, your front three, pull the guard, throw a screen, move it away from the guy who's kicking your ass. Obviously, small things like that can help, but they got to find a way. That's just what it is. This upcoming week, I think there's going to be a couple of fun games. I don't do the whole European football schedule. I don't wake up early enough for that. But I think the Vikings and the Steelers will put on a decent show if you're up for that kind of thing, waking up at that time. At least on the West Coast, it's early as shit. I'm not waking up at 6:30 to watch two teams that aren't mine. Not going to do it. I think the Chargers and the Giants are going to be fun because we're going to get a look at the rookie quarterback. Obviously, benching Russ earlier this week. So I think that'll be an interesting look in. Another one that I think will be fun to watch is the Eagles and the Bucks. Baker and company kind of looking hot. Baker's looking beat up, or not looking beat up, but he got beat up last couple of weeks, taking some big shots, but he's still making things happen. Obviously, the Eagles being the defending champs and looking good, looking sound all around. So I think that's going to be a fun matchup. Another one, just because they just beat an NFC North team, I think the Browns and the Lions will be an interesting play out. I think the Lions kind of have the upper hand because they get to use the Packer footage in their benefit to see how they can get around that defense. So I think that'll be interesting to watch. I'm going to give it to kind of skipped over myself. I'm going to give it to Pittsburgh, the Chargers. I think I have a sneaking hunch the Bucks might win. I'm going to stay away from that prediction though. I think the Lions are going to come away with it being at home. I think that's going to help a lot. And then moving forward, the Ravens and Chiefs. This is interesting because both teams, top caliber teams, both 1-2, both having very tough opponents, playing their own division, um, starting out the season. I'm going to take the Ravens over the Chiefs, and I think the Ravens are going to handle business. And then finally, Sunday Night Football, the Cowboys and the Packers. Once again, I don't see the Packers being a different football team because of last Sunday. I see them going into Dallas and handling business the way that they're supposed to. So I think, honestly, I'm expecting not a blowout, but a handled game, something like a 28-14, 21-7, 17-7 type thing, like handling business. That being said, that's gonna be it for the NFL. At least in my opinion, what's gonna be worth watching. There might be a couple of good defensive games out there, but if you're into that kind of thing. But I think that's where I'll draw that line. Now let's move it to our fuck it Friday bets. I'm taking LSU over Ole Miss at a plus 100, Texas A&M over Auburn at a minus 265, Georgia over Bama, and it's only a minus 142, which doesn't make sense to me because Bama is trash this year. Chargers over the Giants at a minus 278. Baltimore over the Chiefs at a minus 148. Packers over Dallas at a minus $365. Get you $68.33. And that will do it for me. Once again, I'm Mark Saxon. This is Back to the Drawing Board. Thank you for joining yet another week and drink some beers, throw out some bets, live like degenerates all weekend. All sports are back, baby. Let's go.